2019, I was holding a book in my hands, a book that brought spirituality to work, a book that gently nudged us to awaken Buddha within us even at work. Little did I know that 6 years later, in 2025, I will be sitting right across the author herself. I am talking about the best selling book, Buddha at Work. Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Tableel.
And I'm Dr. Sahiba. Together, we head the Center for Behavioral Insights at Fortune Institute of International Business. Welcome to The Better Effect, a podcast where we delve deeper into intricacies of human behavior. Let's face it, we've all had days where we seem to lose our calm and clarity at workplaces. So we thought, why not bring to you someone who's mastered the art of doing exactly the opposite? Please join me in welcoming Miss Gitanjali Pandit, the author of the best selling book Buddha at Work. A CHRO turned spiritual guide, Ms. Gitanjali has helped powerful brands like India Today and Z Media to find spirituality at workplace. With her latest venture, Heart Reboot, she's helping professionals in their mid 30s and 40s to reinvent their romantic lives. Welcome to the episode.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here with both of you. And I'm so delighted that Buddha at Work touched a chord. And here we are, irrespective of the time. Here we are to have what I hope is a wonderful conversation and something that reaches the hearts and minds of all those who tune in.
It did strike a chord, yes, and I'll admit it's a fan moment for me. So, for starters, Gitanjali, help us understand in very simple ways what do you mean by spirituality at workplace?
Um, we all spend a lot of time and effort working on the body. We try and fix the body in all the ways that we possibly can. Uh, but the body is not the essence. A disturbed mind will disturb the body, it'll disturb peace, it'll disturb work, it'll disturb family, it'll disturb relationships, it'll disturb everything. Um, Success cannot be had and enjoyed. It can be certainly had, but it cannot be had and enjoyed without a firm underpinning, which is of reflection, which is of calmness, which is of gratitude and appreciation. That is spirituality.
That's beautiful. So, Gitanjali, that's beautifully said. But, in workplaces, we give a lot of importance to ambition. And ambition is something that is often associated with hustle. Spirituality, on the other side, is associated with stillness and calmness. So, do you think that at workplaces, we can continue to be ambitious and at the same time be deeply spiritual?
Absolutely, yes. As I said, uh, being ambitious is wonderful. Realizing ambition is even better. Enjoying the fruits of that ambition and hard work is the best, right? A lot of times, people have ambition, but they don't know quite how to realize that ambition and how to work on it, which gives them a lot of frustration and irritability. Stress levels are high, anxiety is high, and the feeling that they've missed out. FOMO then takes over, and um, bitterness sets in into every aspect of life. The second set of people have the ambition, have the understanding, and the good fortune at times to get the right breaks, be in the right place at the right time. Their work, their efforts find recognition, they find appreciation, and they're able to move forward and realize that ambition. What after that? I've worked very closely with extremely powerful people, very successful people, and I would also have thought very sorted people, only to find that at a certain juncture of life, people lose um, their joy, their mojo. People start questioning their own decisions, they start questioning their life moments, they start questioning the purpose of their own life. And we all discover at a particular point of time that all that was to no avail. right? It could be because of the illness of a loved one. It
Mm.
could be because somebody developed cancer. It could be because life took a turn for which we were not prepared mentally, emotionally, and dare I say it, spiritually, right? Um, so anything that ties all of this together with the foundation of gratitude helps us to elevate our life condition into one of appreciation for ourselves, respect for other people, and the ability to keep moving forward and be resilient in life. Uh, that is spirituality in a nutshell.
Right. That's beautifully said. But I have a follow-up question. I absolutely understand that, we all go through those moments where you feel, अरे यार इतना कुछ जिंदगी में किया लेकिन किस चीज के लिए किया? That's what you're trying to say. ये क्यों किया? What do you do in those circumstances where you end up feeling that सारी मेहनत बेकार गई? जो चाहिए था वो तो मिला ही नहीं जिंदगी से.
So the other day, somebody asked me this question saying, what is, because I travel the globe, I talk to people about managing stress and anxiety. And stress is a very misunderstood term. It could be the synonym for grief, it could be the synonym for depression, it could be used in place of that feeling of purposelessness and that void that you just spoke of. So it covers up a whole host of things. Everything boils down to our understanding of life and therefore a more educated, better, more informed, more judicious perspective, right? And when you said in your previous question that we all like to hustle, meditate is a verb. It's an action word. It's not a word that takes us away from action. Uh, to meditate is not to sit in silence for long periods of time. To meditate is to carry that attitude of and that approach to people and to situations, to our own reactions, and to how we absorb life, how we absorb experiences, how we absorb interactions. What is the chatter inside us saying? There's a constant chatter that is happening within. Uh, is it positive? Is it negative? Is it helpful? So let me just clarify the difference between positive and negative. Is it helpful or not helpful? Is it hurtful? What is the inner chatter saying at a given point of time? Um, and I think this is the one thing that someone who is questioning themselves at a crossroads in life needs to sit back and bring that freshness of perspective, because only that will give that person the motivation, the energy, and the way forward to pick themselves up from that point of time.
Gitanjali, I was watching a discourse by Sadhguru where he says that when the kidney is functioning, it's taken as a sign of a good health.
Right.
When, let's say, my heart is functioning, it's doing what it needs to do, and we are grateful for that. But when the mind chatters, is that not the job of a mind to keep on chattering? Isn't that a sign in itself that my brain is healthy? So how do we then not
Do you
get
do
it?
you really honestly believe that mind chatter is always helpful?
No, it's not. It's not.
So it's not doing its job simply because I have not trained my mind. The Buddha was the world's first coach,
Oh,
right?
wow.
Today, all the research that is taking place on the Buddha's teachings, unfortunately, is almost entirely in the West. I'm probably the only proponent of what the Buddha taught and the application, direct application to 21st century modern life in India. I'm the only person to do that. What the Buddha taught is very clearly uh, has a sound basis in neurology, psychology, and human behavior. So he was a behavioral scientist, and he understood how human beings are and what they need to do differently in order to have different results. So, mind chatter we all have. Is it bringing me anxiety? Is it bringing me peace? Is a question that will help me distinguish whether is it bringing me closer to my goals or is it taking me away from them? You know, the why they call the mind devil's workshop?
Why? Let us know.
Because the negative functions of this universe, there are two forces in the universe, right? One is the force of the law of aerodynamics, which says that things in the right way can fly or can take flight, and the law of gravity. The law of gravity is to keep us weighted down, right? They're both fulfilling their roles. There's nothing negative or positive about it. They have a role to play and they're fulfilling a role. Similarly, the role of negativity is to hold us back. The role of anything positive is to help us soar, to fly free. It's very difficult to break free of gravity. We all know that, right? It takes a lot of effort when a plane is about to take off and a rocket is about to take off. It takes tremendous effort to break free of that hold of gravity. To allow the mind to become your best friend calls for tremendous effort. The Buddha wrote, and I quote, to forge the mind of peace. So, is the mind a source of peace? Is it a source of grief? Is it a source of hurt? Is it a source of bitterness, jealousy, anger? What is the mind all about?
So, Gitanjali, based on your experience of writing those books and based on your experience of reading all about Buddha's teaching, if you were to give these 2, 3 tips to employees like me and Dr. Tavleen, who often, end up having those uh, dull days at work, what would you recommend? How can we pull ourselves up and how can we control our mind to perform better and to be actually happy performers rather than better performers?
Yes, absolutely. So, I think the first thing is it doesn't begin only on that dull day. It begins by developing a sense of understanding why you're working. What's the purpose that you're working for? I think the purpose for work has to go far beyond um, the house and the car and the EMI and having the child and paying the fees and, raising the child and, the usual that we like to believe is um, and don't get me wrong, I'm also in it, right? I'm also as much a part of it. The only thing that I struggle to do more diligently and more regularly and even more consistently is to develop that sense of understanding of why I'm doing what I'm doing, right? What is the reason beyond all of this? If this is the reason, then I'm going to be very frustrated very soon, right?
And that's true. That's true. And a lot of us find ourselves stuck in work, which is basically because we need to feed our families, send our children to school, pay our checks, and we've never even put the effort of finding the purpose in our life. What is that job that will make me happy? And a lot of us are stuck in this loop. What would your recommendation will be to those people who are stuck in the loop?
Right.
And at the end of the day, it is the reality. Paychecks have to be paid.
Yes, absolutely. So the whole idea of the conversation is not to inspire people to rush out with resignations in their hands.
That could be dangerous. People, you're not recommending that.
No. That's not where I'm coming.
Yeah.
I'm saying that whatever you're doing, there is a meaning to it, right? And that meaning we have to find. There's nothing wrong with also saying that the paycheck that I get from my employer XYZ gives me the freedom and the peace of mind to look after my family while I pursue ABC. So that A could be, gardening. It could be, farming. I'm going to buy a piece of land that I'm going to start organic farming on. It can give me the peace of mind and the ability to focus on doing drama. It could give me. So work is just an element in the field of expression of life. right? It's not the be all and end all. The problem is that in India we are working the most hours across the globe. I usually ask my audiences this question, and people think that it is people in Japan or Korea or the United States who are working the most hours, but it's actually us in India that we're working the most hours. We are also stuck in the worst commutes possible in the world. So our commute time also increases our frustration and our obligations at work, in the sense that, we'll spend more time commuting for work than a whole host of nations. So, what is it that I would like to do? Work is also freedom. The paycheck is not captivity. The paycheck is also celebration. It is also freedom. It is freedom of choice of clothing. It is freedom to choose to invest. It is freedom of growth. It is freedom to be very grateful that I'm able to look after my family in a certain way.
So, Gitanjali, I have two follow-up questions there. See, I'm someone who absolutely openly I endorse finding your meaning in your work. But I'm often questioned that this is just a fluff word for privileged people. You also said, we are in the worst commutes. What about someone who's stuck in a metro? He doesn't care about purpose and meaning, right? For him, the ultimate thing is okay, that message that he gets at the end of the month, account is credited by X amount. How easy or difficult it is for that person to even understand what purpose and meaning would be. Second, what about those people who don't even know what their purpose is?
I think a large majority doesn't know what the purpose is, right? Why they're doing what they're doing. And that is the exact reason why we need to bring in mindfulness, a little bit of awareness of why we are leading the life we are leading, or why we are unhappy. This is an elemental question. The basic question. Why am I unhappy? What is it that I need to do to bring about a change in my dissatisfaction levels, my frustration, my stress, my mm, uh, you know ill health, physical ill health, mental ill health, whatever be the suffering in my life, I must pose that question to myself: why am I suffering? And then arrive at my own wisdom and my own answers and find my own purpose. To answer the other question that you just raised about the person in the metro, we see obvious things, but we don't know if that person is truly suffering, because sometimes, and a lot of people from lesser privileged backgrounds, or when I was struggling professionally and financially myself in a very bad situation, I find that the perspective and resilience is actually very high, and the perspective is very healthy. So the level of suffering, of emotional suffering, is sometimes less, you know. But as we go up the chain of privilege, or as we start feeling, shall I say, more entitled, the more entitled anyone feels, the more their cause of suffering is going to be. Suffering actually arises in the mind, you know. This is scientifically proven. The Buddha said it 2,700 years back, but this is now scientifically proven across the globe that uh, suffering arises in the mind. So, also one more reason to go back to your question, Tavleen, that why control the mind, or why worry too much about the mind? Because it is the biggest enemy that we have. Uh,
And could be the best friend also.
that is the whole endeavor. That's the
Yeah.
whole journey to make it the best friend.
So, Gitanjali, since we're talking about the workplace, and I'll continue with the same example. Let's say this person who's stuck in jam for long, or is in a metro, reaches the office very tired and dull and sad. And the expectation is that don't bring your whole self to the work, right? Keep your emotions outside. This is work. What can organizations do to accept the person as a whole? Because I, as an employee, will bring my inner world also to the work.
Sure.
So, what message do you have for organizations to accept the entire person as a whole?
I think organizations need to be working more on um, wholesome, holistic practices for people, right? People are not just numbers or employees or position holders. They are people, and a more empathetic approach without, of course, losing sight of reason, uh, but a more empathetic approach globally has proved to be very helpful. If you look at companies like Google or Intel or many others who have brought in elements of mindfulness to work, who brought in elements of psychological well-being at work, who are very open to creating or co-creating programs for their employees to work on issues that matter to them. It not only has creates a better working environment, it definitely has an impact on the bottom line and increases profitability by nearly 2.5 x levels. This is again global research is very clear on this, that companies who focus on employee well-being via the more mindful route, holistic practices will be 2.5x more profitable.
So, Gitanjali, I have read your book, Buddha at Work, right? It is more about how an individual brings the Buddha self to work. So, maybe write another book on organizations becoming Buddha, right?
On that line, on that note, I feel why begin at organization level? Why not begin at the elementary level, at the school level? Why don't we teach this to students in school and how it is important for them to be happy, how it is important for them to find purpose? We still find a lot of parents running after their children, telling them that you've got to clear this exam, you got to clear the exam B. But parents also not trying to understand what the child loves, what the child wants to do. So I think it's the elementary level at which we need to kind of reinforce this mindfulness.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yes.
We talk about employee engagement, we talk about keeping the employees happy, we talk about understanding what motivates them. I think it is very important for organizations to figure out that where do employees get this source of energy?
Yes.
What is the purpose that they're looking for? And try to build, I'm sure organizations cannot do it all, but at least some avenues where people get a breather and they're able to kind of nurture their soul so that they can bring back full energy to their work.
Absolutely. And in fact, something as small as an employee talent showcase can actually change the whole vibe of the office and the environment, because people want to be known for who they are as people, not just be the boss or the employee or the team head or the team lead or, team member. It's about who they are and what they bring about.
Gitanjali, I may have a differing opinion, and please agree to disagree. Don't you see it's just a band-aid to a deeper wound? I may do a talent show one day, but if the work culture is toxic, A, I may not have
Yeah.
registrations for that event,
Sure.
and B, Monday again, the same workplace. So don't you think the solution has to be more deeper?
Actually, you see, there are solutions at both ends.
Hmm.
The solution at the organizational end, and there is solution at the individual end. Both solutions call for insight, self-insight. We all have a lot of insight into others. Time to turn the spotlight back on us. So self-insight and authentic effort, which can be done consistently. So it doesn't have to be done daily, but if I say that this is my goal for myself weekly, then I got to deliver on that. On the individual side, that effort comes about by understanding that a toxic workplace becomes toxic. It's the sum total of all of us.
Correct.
So somewhere I've contributed to the toxicity of a workplace.
Hmm.
I'm not,
Also
not a
part-
part of the problem. I am a part of the problem if the workplace is toxic. I haven't turned away from all the gossip happening around the water cooler.
Right.
I haven't turned away from maligning a certain someone in the company who got a promotion out of turn. I haven't turned away from saying clearly this is my department and my turf, and we are doing the most work. Typically we never understand the pain point of another department, another team. another function, right? We are very strong about our own turf.
Hmm.
We're not there as team players. We just like, this is my turf, this is my territory. So be it marketing, be it logistics, be it production, be it a shop floor, be it sales, be it HR, be it XYZ, whoever there is, project managers, whoever there is, whatever role that they're doing, they're very possessive about that role and they believe that they only are doing the best work, right? So this has to change from the individual's point of view. There's a lot of hard work which is involved. I think
I'm sure. And Gitanjali, since you're talking about, the gossips around the water cooler and somebody getting an early promotion, which is totally out of turn. And I think no organization is devoid of their favorites,
right,
right?
right.
Organizations, bosses, they do have their favorite people who are glorified, highlighted, and that also brings disengagement for others.
Sure.
So now when as an employee, someone is dealing with such situation, how do they still awaken that Buddha within themselves?
So I think the first step to take in that is to understand that this is a fact of life.
So accept it.
Accept it. It's a fact of life.
Hmm.
The best antidote to stress, where it does the least damage to the body and to the mind. So, this is the way it is. But when we go into that mode of saying, why is this happening to me? Oh my God, this has happened and this is this and this is the time when we are actually damaging ourselves the most, body and mind. But when we say life is like that, it happens like that, and it has happened, try to find out the reasons, not in a destructive way, but in a positive, constructive way. Maybe something happened or transpired which the general public is not aware of. We don't know that. What is it that, okay, I say that you are my boss's favorite. Are you doing something differently? You're responding to the boss differently for sure. Otherwise, you wouldn't have become the favorite. Right? So there is something to be learned, something to be gained. At the end of it, if it becomes too disturbing and I cannot bring my perspective around it, what are the choices I have? I can continue to be in this environment, continue to suffer myself emotionally and create toxicity around me, or I can step out of the environment. That is a choice that I always have.
I think that's my biggest takeaway from today's podcast, that we have to choose to help ourselves by finding our purpose, finding time for ourselves to kind of reflect and understand what our purpose is. And once we've done that, I think we will probably be able to figure out that spirituality and meaningfulness in our work also. And on that note, given that both Dr. Tavleen and I, we are academicians and we hold research very close to our heart, and now we know that you yourself are a researcher. So what would your advice be to researchers like us? What is this aspect of spirituality and how can it be connected to research related to motivation and fulfillment at workplace?
So I think absolutely you are in the right place and at the right time. This is 21st century is very complex. This is life like human beings haven't ever known, ever. I think there is going to be an inflection point for well-being at work, AI, and the research that you will lead and do on practices of different philosophies that can help to revolutionize human insight, human compassion, and human wisdom that will underpin AI efficiency.
That's great.
I have one follow-up question and then we'll end. So, Gitanjali, do you think with AI, will it become easy to bring my Buddha self to work or will it become more challenging with AI to
I think
keep that Buddha within me?
I think much easier to bring your Buddha self at work. The only struggle that we all have at the end of the day is to reach within and find respect. So, respect for ourselves and respect for others. Respect also for AI as a tool. It's not a perfect tool. It's not a complete tool. It's not, but it's a great aid. AI lies a lot, by the way. So you got to be very watchful of what you're asking it. It can really create a scenario which is not there. Uh, but as workplace toxicity rises globally, as violence at workplace rises globally, and as a lot of issues impinge on us to bring out anxiety and helplessness. See, today the individual is both paradoxically the most empowered and the least empowered. There is global conflict, there is climate anxiety and climate change, which is inducing a lot of anxiety in a lot of people. When I think of what's happening with, you know, the lack of sustainable development across the globe, I feel very helpless as an individual. So these are factors which are impinging on all of us. Life is more complex. The pace of life is very fast. I think the role that almost all ancient practices, particularly what the Buddha taught, uh, is going to be very, very relevant. And now is the time for all of you to do that research and share it as a meaningful practice with organizations and with corporations. Let me also share that I hustle a lot. I am constantly hustling as a as a as an author and trying to promote my books, Buddha at Work, Buddha in Love, and the work that I do with organizations and with individuals. I'm constantly hustling, believe me. Uh, but my underpinning lies in a lot of gratitude for what I have in life and the ability to take forward work which is meaningful to individuals and gives me the sense of purpose beyond any disempowerment that I may experience as an individual facing a very complex and challenging world out there.
So, in a world that glorifies hustle, Gitanjali reminded us that stillness is a superpower.
Thank you, viewers, for joining us. Thank you, Gitanjali, for being with us today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Also, please do tell us in comment section what aspect of human behavior would you like us to cover in the next show. Thank you, everyone.